Hi Steve, hi James. We're here to talk about changes we're making at our October rebalance. Before we start going into specifics, James, could you just give us an overview of our portfolio performance and positioning for the year so far?
Yes, so far this year, risk assets, equities, so think shares in a company, they've done particularly well. We've also seen a broadening out of returns across equities at the regional level. So it's really paid dividends for us to be diversified across assets at the regional level, across portfolios. And then within our bond components, so think government bonds, which is a loan to the government, and corporate bonds, a loan to a company, they've also contributed well to overall portfolio performance.
Okay, and in terms of changes we're now making to our portfolios in our October rebalance, how are we amending bond exposures, first of all?
Well, the overall bond exposure across portfolios is not changing. And we're also not changing the split between government bonds and corporate bonds. But within that corporate bond exposure, we are taking the opportunity to exit an existing holding and take profits on that. And we're redistributing that capital across other areas of the corporate bond market that we think is going to be less susceptible to volatility.
And how are we amending our government bond exposures?
So in terms of the overall government bond exposure, we're not adjusting that position. We think of government bonds as a good hedge if we see a deterioration in the economic outlook. They also provide a very good level of income. So we're happy to take an overweight position in the asset class. So as part of the October rebalance, we're making that adjustment to ensure that we're not overly exposed to an adverse move in interest rates.
And what changes are we making to the equity portions of portfolios?
So we're adjusting our smaller companies exposure, and that really focuses on the UK and US elements of the portfolios. So we're looking to reduce our emphasis on UK small caps and align that with a greater weighting to US small caps. So as a long-term position in portfolios, we like the small cap space. These companies are trading on very favourable valuations. The rationale behind trimming UK, increasing US, really stems from persistent inflation pressures in the UK, persistent fiscal risks. And in contrast to that, we think those same conditions in the US may be more favourable over the long term for smaller companies. And another beneficiary of that UK small cap reduction will be an increase in Japanese equity exposure. We believe Japanese equities are currently trading on very favourable valuations versus global peers, and Japan also have a new government who may be more proactive for long-term economic growth.
Okay, that all makes sense. Steve, what other changes are we making to our equity exposures?
So we've got exposure to areas of the equity market that we think will do quite well as and when the central banks reduce interest rates in the future. Specifically, that's real estate and financial services. So it's companies operating in those two sectors. What we're doing at this stage is just reducing down to some extent our real estate exposure and increasing our exposure to financial services. And that's really a calibration. We think that financial services will do slightly better with the very specific outlook that we've got for interest rates.
And to finish, we are comfortable with our exposure to defensive sectors of the market, but we are looking to shift our balance a little bit there. James, could you expand on it?
So two key elements to our defensive exposure are towards the healthcare sector and also utilities through infrastructure. In terms of the perceived risks to the economic outlook, and we think the risks to the economic outlook are balanced, and in response to that, we no longer favour one particular defensive position over another, and as a result, we're equalising those exposures.
So quite a few individual changes there, but they don't amount to a material change in our posture. We're really quite comfortable with the position we've got. In effect, what we're doing is just making sure that the roof is in good order while the sun is shining.
Right, okay. Thank you very much both for joining me, and thank you very much to our investors for your continued support.